Okay, and can everybody see that? All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and get started. Thank you guys so much for being here today in the middle of a beautiful last summer day, actually. Super excited that autumn is starting tomorrow, so hopefully we'll get some cooler weather soon. I know it's been super hot this summer. But anyway, like Miranda said, my name is Rachel Bedford, and I'm a nutrition student at the University of Alabama in my senior year. This year, the coordinated program in dietetics with the University of Alabama is in collaboration with the UA wellness and work life office. And so we've really enjoyed working with them so far. I know it's only in the beginning weeks, but they've been awesome for us, and we've got to do a lot of cool things already. So we really appreciate that. But today's class is going to be on a balanced basket. So we're going to talk about how to develop a grocery list, and we'll take you through steps of going to the store, coming home, how to build balanced, healthy meals, and everything that entails. So I was one of the ones who worked on this presentation, as well as two other coordinated program students, Bryn and Courtney. So we are very excited to present this to you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, before we even start talking about going to the grocery store and going through all of those steps, we want to cover the very foundational basics. So we're going to start with discussing what a balanced diet even is, because that is where we want to lay our foundation. So as you can see here in this graphic, this is from myplate.gov, which is a really helpful resource if you want to pursue looking into that further. You can just go to their website. They've got lots and lots of great things. But we're going to take a look at this graphic and kind of just break it down a little bit. So as you can see here, it is set up in the format of a plate, and it has all of our 5 food groups that are foundational to a balanced diet and are very important to healthy functioning of our body. So we have a fruits section, we have the vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy. So those are all of the 5 food groups that we want to make sure we're incorporating in our diet to be balanced. And so as you can see here, the proportions of each of these, about half of the plate is composed of fruits and vegetables, whereas a smaller portion of the plate is protein and a smaller portion of it is grains, and then we have some dairy on the side. So this is kind of what you want to aim for at every meal, or if you're just thinking about the overview of your day, this is about how it should look. Now, I did want to also address the food pyramid, because I'm sure a lot of you might be familiar with it. I know that several years ago, I grew up learning about the food pyramid rather than MyPlate. So this one might look a little bit more familiar to you. So that's why we kind of just wanted to go over both and address the differences and why we updated to MyPlate. So as you can see in the food pyramid, at the very base, we have the bread, cereal, rice, and pasta group. That is making up the bulk of the pyramid here. And then we have on the next tier up, we have the vegetable group and the fruit group. And then as you go even further up, you have the dairy group, which composes of things like milk, yogurt, and cheese. And then you have your protein, such as meat, poultry, fish, and even dry beans and eggs are in that group as well. And then at the very top, you have your fats, oils, and sweets, which actually in the MyPlate is not even a food group. But the key differences here that we wanted to point out is that in the pyramid, the grains group composes the bulk, whereas as you can see in the MyPlate, going back to it, the bulk of our of the food groups in our balanced diet is fruits and vegetables. So this is a very key change that they made in the MyPlate. Another key difference is that the fats, oils, and sweets is no longer really necessarily considered a food group. And again, you can see that here in the MyPlate. It's not really specified. It just kind of blends in with all of the other components. So that is why we are generally aiming for more of the MyPlate route, because we do want the bulk of our diet to be fruits and vegetables, and then have a smaller portion of grains, protein, and dairy. But yeah, I just wanted to emphasize the importance of that since I'm sure a lot of us are more familiar or could be more familiar with the food pyramid. And this change was made in 2011. All right, so next we're going to just kind of go through each food group and talk about the serving sizes as well as some of the sources. So we can start with the protein food group. Within this food group, we have things like chicken breast, so things like poultry, also what's not on here, things like beef, beans, which is a non-animal source of protein. We have tofu, shrimp, or seafood. We could also include things like fish, and then eggs. And a keynote for beans, which I want to emphasize, is beans is an incomplete protein, meaning it does not have all of the essential amino acids, which is why if you do choose beans as your protein source, you're going to want to pair it with something like rice, so that way it can be a complete protein. And then as far as serving sizes go, you're going to want to aim for about 6 to 8 servings a day, which is 6 to 8 ounces. And you might ask, what does that look like? Well, one serving of meat is about the size of 1 ounce. And then if you look at your hand, the palm of your hand is about equal to 4 to 6 ounces, I would say, maybe 3 to 4. Another example of a serving size of protein would be 1 egg or something like half of a cup of cooked beans or 1 ounce of tofu, which if you look on the package, it should usually tell you about how many ounces are in a serving. Our next food group is the grains group. So some examples of grains would be rice, bread, and crackers. And there are also a few differences within this group. For example, rice, you can either buy it white or brown rice. For bread, you can either have white bread or whole grain bread. And then for crackers, similar things, you can either have just plain crackers or whole grain crackers. And there are a few key differences between the two. Usually white grain products do not have as much fiber or vitamins and minerals necessarily as things like whole grain bread or brown rice. And you generally want about half of your grains to be whole grain. And it is because of the higher fiber content and vitamins and minerals that you get from them. But that's not to say you don't have to ever eat white rice or white bread ever again. You can still include those. Just make sure you're getting about half and half or even more so whole grains. So you should shoot for about 6 to 8 servings of these a day. And a serving size could look like 1 slice of bread, 1/2 of a cup of cooked oatmeal, pasta, or rice, or 1 ounce of crackers. And if you don't know what 1 ounce of crackers looks like, usually kind of like the tofu and the protein group, you can look on the box and it should tell you. All right, our next food group is the fruit food group. I'm sure all of you are familiar what fruit is, but we'll go over it just in case. We've got things like strawberries, oranges, berries, apples, and bananas in this food group. And you want to aim for about 2 servings of these a day. But depending on what type of fruit it is, the serving size could look a little different. For example, watermelon has a lot of water content in it. So it is not as dense as something like a banana. So 1 serving size of watermelon might be a little bit higher volume than a banana. And this could look like 1 cup of watermelon as 1 serving of fruit, as in contrast to something like a half of a banana or a small banana being 1 serving. Other examples could be 1 medium-sized apple or half of a cup of berries. Okay, and then our next food group is the vegetable food group, and these are some examples. Again, kind of like fruits, I'm sure you know what vegetables are and everything that goes into that. There might be a little bit of debate on the tomato here, since it does have seeds, could be technically a fruit, but for our purposes, it's a vegetable today. So in the vegetable group, we have things like broccoli, peppers, corn, onions, and tomatoes. Another key difference or thing to point out in the vegetable group is that we have things called non-starchy vegetables and starchy vegetables. The difference here is that starchy vegetables kind of in the name, have a higher starch content. So they're going to be higher in carbohydrates and higher in energy compared to non-starchy vegetables, which typically have a much lower starch content and carbohydrate content. So that is a key difference when you're building your plate and you're thinking about all of the vegetables you're going to be choosing. Just keep in mind that some are more starchy than others. So if you are wanting maybe like 2 or 3 vegetables, you could pick 2 non-starchy and 1 starchy, or 1 non-starchy and 1 starchy. So just keep that in mind. And for the vegetable group, you're wanting to aim for about 3 servings of these a day. So the serving size of vegetables, like the fruit, kind of vary depending on a few factors. This could be depending on whether they're cooked or whether they're raw or whether they're leafy green. So let's just kind of talk about each one and why they're different. So half of a cup of cooked vegetables is going to be equal to 1 serving. And this is because usually when vegetables are cooked, they are cooked down, so they become a much lower volume, whereas 1 cup of raw vegetables, they still retain a lot of their water content, so they are a little bit more bulky, which is why the serving size is a little bit bigger. And then leafy greens, the serving size is even bigger, so 2 cups of leafy greens is equal to 1 serving, and this is just because they, again, has to do with volume. They take up much more volume than something like cooked vegetables. And then finally, our last food group is the dairy food group. And the dairy food group is really important because this is where we get a lot of our calcium and things like vitamin D. There's also a bit of protein that is in this food group as well, just naturally because of the milk and cheese and yogurt products. But like I just said, these are some of the examples of where dairy can be sourced from. You can either have milk, things like cheese, or also yogurt. And in this food group, you want to aim for about 3 servings a day. And typically it is recommended to shoot for more low or non-fat options. But again, it's completely up to you and your preferences, but that is the recommendation. And then a serving size of dairy looks like about 1 cup of milk or yogurt, or about 3 tablespoons of cheese, which we'll talk about what serving sizes look like in the next slide or two. So I'll give you a little bit better idea. If you're like, well, what does that even look like? We'll talk about it a little bit and give you some helpful skills and tips to kind of know exactly what that looks like when you are choosing these options. And then if you are not able to eat dairy, there are dairy alternatives out there you can explore more of. Things like almond milk, oat milk, let's see what else. Different types of things like that. You can get your calcium in, and sometimes vitamin D if it's fortified with it, but just be aware that the levels might not be quite as high in some products. Okay, now here's the slide I was talking about. This will kind of help you give like a visual of what portions look like. If you know everything of what I just said is like, that's just way too much overwhelming. Like, how can I even remember that? When I'm making my plate, how does that even apply? What is 1 ounce of anything? So this kind of gives you a little bit of a visual, and it's on your hand, so you have your hand pretty much everywhere you go. So you have the measurement right there. So let's take a look at this diagram and kind of break it down for you. So for example, in the first picture, we have how you can measure grains. So about a serving size of grains would be, says a modest handful. So when you're building your plate, you can kind of gauge off of that. With fruits and vegetables, about, let's see, 1 serving size. Again, it depends on if it's cooked or raw, so do keep that in mind. But I'd say about a serving size of cooked vegetables is the size of a fist. Maybe if it's salad greens or something, it would be 2. And then for your protein, like I said earlier, about the size of your palm would be between 3 to 6 ounces, depending on its size. And then for oils, or you could also use it for cheese as well, it's about the size of your fingertip. So those are just kind of some helpful and practical skills and tips you can use when you're building your plate or out on the go or anything like that, just to kind of give you an idea. All right, and on this slide, Eat the Rainbow, this just simply means to incorporate a variety of foods and food groups into your diet. As you can see here in the picture, we have all different kinds of colors of fruits and vegetables. And the reason this is important and you don't just want to be eating a bunch of red vegetables all the time or a bunch of green vegetables all the time is because certain colors of fruits and vegetables have different vitamins and minerals. So red vegetables might be higher in one vitamin or mineral than something like green vegetables. So that's why you want to eat a variety of all these different colors. So you're getting a bunch of different vitamins and minerals that are really important for healthy bodily function. Okay, so now that we've kind of gone over the basics of what a balanced diet even is, and we've laid our foundation, we can go ahead and start applying this to how we build a balanced basket in the grocery store. So the very first step before we even go to the grocery store is we need to create a grocery list. And so a first helpful step in doing this is to simply look around your kitchen and your pantry first. See what items you have, what you might can utilize in meals that you want that week. Take a look in your pantry, make a little note, go look in your refrigerator, see if anything needs to be used. And kind of as you're doing this, think about some meal options that you might want to have throughout the week and build off of that. So as far as the grocery list goes, when you're getting ready to write things down, think of kind of what we talked about in building a balanced diet, how we have all of our 5 food groups, the grain, the protein, the fruits and vegetables, and the dairy. And you want to use that as your template for building your grocery list, in addition to kind of keeping in the back of your mind what you have on stock already. So as you're building your list, think about maybe writing down 2 or 3 grain options, 3 or 4 protein options, 2 or 3 fruit options, 3 to 4 vegetable options, and 1 or 2 dairy options. And we can build meals off of those. So here we have an example grocery list. And again, it's laid out within the 5 food groups, and we have several options within each food group. Very nicely organized and set up as a good template to follow. So let's just kind of look at each option we have here. And then later we'll talk about the meals that we are able to build from them. So in the grains group, we have things like rice, whole grain bread, and pasta. And see here, like we talked about earlier, you might want to eat white rice, but we also have your whole grain bread right there. So we kind of have half and half. And then with the pasta, you can do either regular pasta, whole grain pasta, or I know they also have products in the store where the pasta is made out of legumes like chickpeas or lentils or things like that. So if you've never tried any of those products, I encourage you to at least try it out. They're usually higher in protein and can be really delicious. And then as far as your proteins go, we have turkey, chicken breast, eggs, and beans on this grocery list. And then for fruits, we have bananas, grapes, and strawberries. And notice here that all of these fruit options are different colors. So we have our variety. We've got yellow, we've got grapes, which could be, I guess, several different colors. They could be green, purple, black, anything like that. And then strawberries, which are typically, red, of course. So, and then in our vegetable group, we have things like lettuce, peppers, onions, and cauliflower. So again, all of these are different colors. So we have a good variety here. Now do notice we don't have a starchy vegetable on here. These are all non-starchy. So if you wanted to substitute one of these for a starchy vegetable, you could definitely do that. And then for our dairy group, we have things like skim milk, low-fat yogurt, and string cheese. So we've got one from each of the subgroups in the dairy, the milk, yogurt, and cheese. And also keep in mind that your list can also include things like snacks and quote-unquote treats. Don't feel like you have to restrict yourself. Again, we're talking about how to be balanced. So yes, these are all of the foundational components to a balanced basket, including all of the 5 food groups. But if you do want, some cookies throughout the week, go ahead and get those. Don't restrict yourself because again, we are trying to be balanced here. You don't want to go too far one way or the other. All right. And then as far as grocery shopping goes, so we have made our list and we are headed off to the store and we kind of need to know what the layout looks like generally. So if you've heard the saying shop the perimeter, some of you might know what that means. Others are like, I've heard it, but I don't know what it means exactly. It's just kind of referring to the layout of grocery stores. Typically, on the perimeter of grocery stores, you have things like your coolers, your freezers, which are going to contain things like fruits and vegetables, produce items, dairy, eggs, the meat, all of those type things. Whereas in the middle of the store, kind of in the aisles, you have things like dry goods, cans, chips, cookies, more processed foods, and things like that. So that is why typically people say to shop the perimeter and start there before you get into the main aisles. But a few quick tips that we want to go over as far as grocery shopping include the fact that off-brand items can be great options. I know a lot of us, when we think about how we have to eat healthy, that means we have to get the highest brand, the best brand for every single thing, which can sometimes be more expensive. So if you are looking at a product and it's, the on-brand option and you think, to be healthy, you have to get that one, but the Great Value brand is sitting right next to it, it's okay to buy the off-brand items. They can be just as good in quality and a great option. Another tip to mention, again, this kind of goes with the, oh, I got to be healthy, so I have to buy everything organic. But you do not have to buy everything organic. If that is something that you prefer and you just personally, really, really, really want to buy organic and that is something you highly value, go right ahead. But if buying organic or thinking that you have to buy everything organic is the main barrier to you not buying things like produce, like fresh fruits and vegetables, it is okay to buy things that are not organic. It is better to buy produce than not to buy it at all because of that barrier. And then another tip to kind of keep in your mind as you're going through the store, if you're about to check out or you're halfway through your list, just look down and kind of check and see how colorful your cart is. If your cart is mainly, a bunch of brown items or yellow items or red items or anything of like one or two colors, maybe kind of think about some other options you can throw in there, kind of like the picture on the slide up at the top right. We've got all kinds of different colors. So we've got lots of variety. So that's just something to keep in mind. Just kind of check every once in a while as you're going through the store and make note and see if it's colorful. And then the last tip we're going to talk about on this slide is to look at the nutrition facts labels. You don't have to be so strict on this, but some things to keep in mind if you are looking at the nutrition facts labels could be things like sodium and added sugars. But we'll talk about that, I think, in the next slide. Let's see. Yes, here we go. So I really, really love this nutrition facts label because it breaks it all up into different colors. So we can kind of take a sometimes overwhelming image and make it a little bit simplified. So although they're not color coded in the store, unfortunately, I think after we go over it this time on the slide, when you do get to the grocery store, you'll already have been a little bit more familiar with it. So it's not like you're looking at it for the first time and not knowing what anything is. So let's break it down. At the very top, we have the serving sizes. So it usually will tell you how many servings per container something is. So for this example, there are 4 servings per container, and then it has what the serving size is. So a serving size for this item is 1 cup. And so there are 4 servings per container. 4 times 1, there's about 4 cups of product in this. And then right under the serving size information, we have the calories. So this calorie says 280, which simply means that for every serving size, so 1 cup is a serving size. So for every 1 cup of the food, it is worth 280 calories. And then all of the values below that is for 1 cup as well. So usually on nutrition facts labels, we have right under calories the total amount of fat, and that is in grams. We also have the fat broken down into things like saturated fat and trans fat. So usually we want to kind of watch our saturated fat and maybe limit it a little bit. And then for trans fat, we definitely want to avoid that. So just be aware. And then we also have things like cholesterol. We have sodium, which, like I said in the last slide, is something you do want to be aware of. And this, let's see, 850 milligrams. To the far right in the purple section, you can see that that says 37%, which, excuse me, 37% means that based on a 2,000 calorie diet, that is going to be 37% of your recommended intake for the day. So keep in mind that daily values, since they are based on a 2,000 calorie diet, this is more generalized because not everyone needs 2,000 calories, but it just gives you at least a little bit of guidance when you are looking at it. And then under sodium, we have the total carbohydrates in grams. And carbohydrates is broken down into the grams of fiber, sugar, and added sugar. So we'll talk a little bit about each of those. Okay, so for fiber, typically women need about 28 grams minimum, and men between 30 and 35 grams minimum a day. And then it will tell you about what percentage based on 2,000 calorie diet this food has. So this food has 4 grams. And then we have listed the total sugars, which total sugars refers to both the natural sugars in food and also the added sugars in food. But then usually right below the total sugars, it will specify how many of those are added. And this one has 0. And then under carbohydrates, we have the grams of protein. So as you can see in that kind of orangey yellow section, we covered all of our components. We have the fat, the carbohydrates, and the protein. And then at the very bottom, we have 4, vitamins and minerals listed. And they simply just list these because typically Americans are usually a little bit lower on their values of these. That's just something to kind of keep in mind. All right, and now we're going to take a short little break from all that information and talk about a common food myth that you might have heard or maybe just think about in the back of your mind. And it concerns fresh food versus frozen and canned food. I know sometimes, again, when you're thinking about, oh, I've got to eat healthy, everything has to be as fresh as possible, which it can be a good thing. I mean, fresh food does taste amazing, but it's not practical all of the time in every situation. And sometimes, we just need something more convenient or more cost efficient or effective. So the myth is that frozen food and also canned food can be just as nutritious as fresh food. We'll kind of just talk through it. So frozen food, usually when these foods are harvested, they're harvested in their peak season. So they're going to be very high in their nutritional value. And when they're frozen, all of those nutrients are preserved. So their nutrition is just as good as frozen. And you can keep it for longer, which is a huge benefit. And then as far as canned food goes, same type of thing. They're harvested in their peak season typically, and they're preserved through the canning process. The only thing I would keep in mind here is that sometimes canned fruits and vegetables do have added sodium, so they have added salt and sometimes added sugar. So you can take your nutrition facts label skills and apply it to looking at the back of the can and just kind of seeing where that sodium level lies and also the added sugar. And a tip, if they are more high in sodium, you can typically rinse your vegetables and get rid of the excess sodium on the outside of them, and that will help. But yes, so this myth, you can still eat amazingly healthy with frozen foods or canned options in addition to fresh. All right, a couple other things to keep in mind. What if you're on the go and you didn't plan at all? Like you've had a really stressful day at the office or at school or just in general, and you really need to make a meal at home and you're in traffic and you're just super stressed out and you don't have a grocery list. You have no idea what's at home in your pantry or fridge. These are a few tips that you can kind of just have ready so that way when you go into the store, you are prepared. So one thing is to prioritize protein. As you're walking through the doors, think about what protein option do I want to include in my meal. You can think about the things like chicken, fish, eggs, tofu, beans are a super good option. You need to be really, really quick with them. You can do the canned bean option, just things like that. So pick a protein first and then start thinking about, okay, what fruits and vegetables do I want to include? Maybe you pick 2 vegetables and a fruit, or 3 vegetables, or anything like that, just whatever sounds good. And with that, you can kind of go ahead and create a quick meal when you get home. And we'll talk more about specific meals in the next few slides. But if you are like, don't have a grocery list and you're just needing something really, really quick, these are the guidelines you can have prepared. Prioritize protein and pick 2 or 3 fruits and vegetables. And then when you are eating out, just take a look at the menu, see what options have a good protein source. Kind of again, like being in the grocery store, you can apply the same general tips. Prioritize protein and fruits and vegetables. And just make sure that there is a good variety and that your plate is colorful and filled with these options. Another thing that is related to eating out is vending machines. If you do need like a quick snack or anything like that when you're in the office or at school, think about options that might have a little bit higher protein content or even fiber. And again, use your nutrition label skills to apply here and just take a glance at it. All right, now we'll talk about storing your groceries. So when you get home and you have all of these groceries for the week, you can apply some of these tips to make the meal planning go a little bit easier and smoother. So one tip is to wash and cut up your produce right when you get home. I know that might not be the first thing you want to do when you get home because you've been to the store, probably tired from that, but it will save you a lot of time and stress and effort in the long run, and you will definitely thank yourself later for taking this step. So go ahead and get all of your produce out, wash them all. And I know that the FDA recommends that running water is just fine to wash your produce, but if you want to take an extra step, and it is important to you, you can do a mixture of vinegar and water to kind of help. And I know that they also have fruits and vegetable sprays that you can use. But again, just plain old running water, according to the FDA, just works as well. So, and then you can cut up your produce after that and put it in either glass jars, or I know some people even use mason jars or anything like that, just so that during the week, whether you're making a meal or just needing to grab a quick snack, it's super easy to go in there and just grab it, rather than if you were during the week having to wash and cut every single time you had to do this. You might not be as likely to eat them. Another tip would be to organize your fridge and pantry by food group. So you can put all of your grains in one section, things like your rice or your pasta and your bread, and then some of your canned goods in one section, protein options in another section. You can organize your fridge by all of those groups, as well as your fruits and vegetables. And this just, again, kind of like the washing the produce, it sets you up for success during the rest of the week when you're making your meal and you want to, grab all of these components. You can take a look at each of these sections and it makes it a little bit easier on your mind rather than feeling scatterbrained if everything is all mixed together and it's like, what is even all this? Another tip is to store your treats higher up or behind the healthier options. So if you did get a bag of cookies at the store, you can, put them behind maybe your bananas or strawberries or something like that, or, super high up. So you have to exert a little bit more effort to get those options, rather than, them just being really readily available for you to snack on all the time. That way you have to be a little bit more intentional about eating them. And then another tip is to freeze foods if needed to prevent food waste. Because I know if you didn't use something towards the end of the week and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want this to go bad because the waste of money and resources, you can go ahead and freeze them and they'll be good for a lot longer. Okay, so now we've talked about building a grocery list and going through the store, and we brought all of this home. We've sorted away, organized it, all of those great things. Now we can focus on how to build a balanced meal with all of this stuff that we've brought. So like, what do we even do with it? So a few guidelines: you can pick a protein source, add your veggies, whole grains, maybe some dairy and fruit. So just think back again to the My Plate at the very beginning, where it was kind of laid out by half of your plate being fruits and veggies, a portion of it being grains, a portion of it being protein, and then adding in some dairy and fruit if you want. And kind of like the plate in this picture above, you can see that it has a lot of healthy fruits and vegetables in there, and some lean protein and grains, and let's see, I think that's bread, things like that. So just keep all of that in mind. So now we'll talk about specific meals. We'll go through each one, and we'll also have our grocery list so you can kind of see how we were able to build all kinds of different meals just from a few basic items that we have purchased. So our original list is right there in the middle. Again, it is numbered by the food groups and each option within the food group. And we have our meal options as well over to the far right. So for breakfast, we can build things like egg bites, overnight oats, muffins. We can even have cereal with fresh fruit or nuts. So you can see here from a really simple grocery list, we actually have a lot of options. That's like 4 options there. And a lot of these options can also be made in advance, and you can put them in the freezer to reheat super quickly during the week, or even take on the go. And things like with the cereal, again, we're taking something that you might in the back of your mind see as not as healthy. You don't have to restrict it or cut it out. We have taken the cereal and we have, instead of restricting it, we have added things to it. So we've added things like the fresh fruit and nuts, which will really increase its nutritional value. So we've got a lot of more vitamins and minerals and things like that, even fiber. All right, now moving on to lunch. Again, we've got several good options here from a basic list. So we have sandwiches, which you can make from the bread that you've bought. We've also have chicken breast on the list that you can put on a sandwich, turkey, and you can even, like if you made a dinner with chicken breast the next day or something, you could take that and use it on your sandwich. Or if you meal prepped a bunch of chicken the first day, like on the Sunday, you can use that in your meals as well. You can also put it in things like wraps. You can make rice bowls super easily. You can add beans to the rice bowls or wraps as well for some extra protein and fiber. We have things like salads, which are super easy to combine a bunch of fresh fruits and vegetables, protein, all kinds of things in those, and you can take them on the go pretty easily. And then leftovers is another good thing that I love too, because you can make something like a dinner during the week, and the next day when you're going to school or work, you can just put that in a to-go box and take it with you and heat it up somewhere, and it's super easy. So it's a great way to utilize the resources and the time that you have put into it. And then for dinner, some meal options we have here that are really good include tacos or taco bowls. Now, tacos and taco bowls are a really good option because, again, they're super easy to just include so many different fruits and vegetables in them. You can have pretty much almost any kind of protein that you want, depending on what you have on the list. You can add beans, you can add rice, things like chicken, beef, just any kind of option, and make it super easy. You can also have the pasta with a protein source and vegetables. So like, again, we talked about with the pasta, it could be the whole grain pasta or even the pasta made from the beans or legume options that we talked about. You can add something like chicken or beef or any kind of protein option with that. And another tip for including vegetables in these type dishes is either having a salad along with it, or even chopping up the vegetables and putting that in the pasta. You can also add, I know spinach is really good to put in pasta because it cooks down and typically you can't really even taste it or tell that it's there. You can also mix vegetables in with the pasta sauce to kind of get that in with it. And then another really good option that I wanted to mention were sheet pan meals. These are so easy because all you have to do is add your protein, add a couple of vegetables, your grains or carbohydrate source, put it on a pan with some seasonings and put it in the oven, and then just, go do chores or something, or take a relax for a little bit, and you don't even have to think about it until it's ready and you've got dinner already. And then you can find easy recipes for any type of dinner or lunch options, or even sheet pan meals online. But there is one that we put here on this slide just to kind of show you how simple they can be and versatile. You can use all different kinds of things. For this one specifically, we have chicken as your protein. We've got cauliflower and red pepper, which you will notice are two different colors. So we've included our variety here. We have potatoes, which is a starchy vegetable. And then we've got just really basic seasonings. Like you can just throw some salt and pepper on there, maybe some garlic powder and olive oil. And all you got to do is put that in the oven, and then you're pretty much done. So it makes it super duper easy and simple. And then we'll move on to some snack food options. These can also be used as a side, or even sometimes a dessert or things like that. And these can be popular with kids. Maybe not so much the nuts and seeds, but I know that kids absolutely love string cheese. So we'll just go through each option. One option is yogurt and fruit, which is really good because in the yogurt we've got our dairy, so we've got calcium, sometimes a bit of protein, and then fruit we have vitamins and minerals and also fiber. So this is a really good option. You can also put it in the freezer for a little bit and it tastes really good that way. Another option we have nuts and seeds, which are really high in healthy fats and vitamins and minerals and fiber once again. We have air popped popcorn, which can be super tasty. And then, like I mentioned, the string cheese, which is very popular with kids. So these are some final things that we want to go over to kind of keep in mind overall. So one thing is, I'm sure a lot of you are needing to cook for the whole family. Since I'm a student, I'm not as experienced in that, so I recognize my limitations on how to speak to this. So bear with me, but I know that a lot of these meals can be family friendly. It is obviously up to individual preferences, your preferences, and also kids' preferences and things like that. But you can also easily adjust them to satisfy those needs and different tastes and things like that for multiple family members. Another thing to keep in mind, if you're trying to get your family to venture out and eat more variety of things, just keep exposing them to new foods. I know, like initially they might, just completely reject it, but the more that they are introduced to it and exposed to it and all different kinds of things, the more likely they'll eventually come around and start trying things and maybe even like them. So encourage you not to give up, just keep providing and see where it takes you. And then another important thing to keep in mind is, like we did talk about, utilize leftovers. You don't have to cook every single meal. I can just, nobody wants to do that. That's too much time and effort. So utilize those leftovers, use them as lunches or even dinners sometimes if you just don't have time. Can be a really good option. And then finally, maybe one of the most important things is to add more to your meals rather than take away. So we don't want to have such a restrictive mindset. I know when we're thinking about eating healthy, it's like, oh, we can't eat this, we can't eat that. So like, what do we eat? Like, it seems like we can't eat anything. So have more of a adding mindset rather than a taking away. So add more fruits and vegetables to your meals, add more protein options throughout the week to choose from, things like that, so you don't feel so limited. We don't want to have, a scarcity mindset. We want to have a mindset of abundance, so that way you feel like you have a little bit more freedom rather than being so rigid. So that is an important thing that we did want to mention. So that about wraps up the presentation. Now we will open the floor to any questions or comments you have, but in general, we thank you so much for being here and look forward to any input that you have so far. So thank you.